As we have mentioned probably 100 times before, this past year we have been involved in a campaign to mandate paid sick leave minimums in the state of Nebraska. Like I said, I know you've heard at least some of this before, so I'll try not to bore you with the repetition. But currently, there is no law that mandates any form of paid time off for any kind of employee. So paid sick leave for Nebraskans is a campaign to mandate paid sick leave minimums regardless of the size of company you work for and regardless of how many hours you work for that company. This is especially important as folks who work for small businesses and folks who work part-time are the most frequently excluded from benefits such as paid time off. Additionally, this can help cease the predatory business practice of scheduling employees like just under 40 so that you don't have to give them things like PTO. One of the obstacles in this campaign over the past year and change has been education. As we've approached people on the street or in different event spaces about this campaign, the biggest response has been, "That's not a thing already?" One thing that everyone seems to agree on is that it seems like a basic thing, the most basic privilege to be able to take a day off when you are sick and rest and lay down and not have to go into work. But currently that privilege is still out of reach for thousands of Nebraskan workers, which is why we're so excited that after all of the work that you helped us do this year in gathering signatures and signing and all of that, it will be on the ballot this November. And it being on the ballot this November is going to be so important for so many people. 36% of full-time workers in Nebraska have no access to any kind of paid time off. And 86.4% of part-time employees also have no paid sick leave. This is especially important for certain vulnerable industries, like 56% of food service workers who are full-time who don't have any form of paid sick leave, 57% of construction workers who don't have paid sick leave, and 54% of educational workers who have no paid sick leave. I was among those thousands not long ago. This is my first ever job that has ever offered me paid sick leave. And in my work history, I have been a department store clerk, a Starbucks barista, a fitting room attendant. I worked for a vintage store, all kinds of things. And none of those jobs ever offered me any form of paid time off. So I know this trouble well. This is the first time in my life when I have been able to take days off without fearing that missing piece of my paycheck. And I remember a few years ago, right before COVID hit, I got horribly sick on Christmas morning. And by the time we got around to Christmas dinner, I was covered in fever sweats and coughing and sneezing and just a mess. And I couldn't walk on my own. It was awful. And so I had to stay a few days at my mom's house. And every morning I would wake up sweaty and disgusting and text all of my coworkers, "Please, can someone take my shift today?" And eventually, even though I wasn't fully better, I had to go back. I was hurting from those missing paychecks, and I had run out of favors from my coworkers. And so I went to work with my sniffly nose and my loud cough and walked to my little small business job where I had to wear my coat inside because the heat didn't work inside the shop. And it was an unpleasant experience for me and for all of the customers who I sneezed and coughed all over their debit cards. And after we have lived through a global pandemic where we were begging people to stay home when they were sick, I think we can all see the importance of a law like this. The fight for paid sick leave is about more than what it says on the tin. This is a fight for folks with disabilities and chronic illnesses to be included in the workforce. This is a fight for women to be able to be both mothers and workers and take time off when their kids are sick. This is a fight for people over profit and for a basic human right. So make sure you tell your friends to get out to the polls in November and vote yes on paid sick leave.
Morning, I'm Jeff Speihs. My family has been at the Abbey for a long time. I was just talking to Charles. in between services, and we're kind of deciding if it was 5 to 7 years. Not sure, just been around for a while. So my family has been here. Yeah, that's right. Which is a good plug for this directory yearbook that's coming up. Yearbook. Please sign up. Then you'll know basically when you've started coming here. So Deborah asked me a while ago to talk for this sort of series throughout the summer around music, and I said, sure, I love music. I love listening to music in all formats, from like cassettes to CDs to vinyl. I mean, I did buy a Dire Straits album on cassette this summer, and I love 8-track. I haven't gotten into 8-tracks yet. It's a little before my time. Yes. Yeah, too late. Yeah. I like going to shows, whether it's small shows with just a few people to, big shows at arenas. I ever since I was young, kind of liked music. From listening to music with my dad to now, I listen to mostly to a genre of music called dad rock, which is bands like Wilco, John Prine, Grateful Dead, Fish, The National, Vampire Weekend, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Bruce Springsteen and the Killers. And then this is Labor Day, we're kind of thinking about work, and so a subgenre of dad rock is a genre known as heartland rock, which is generally categorized as like straightforward, kind of often like kind of roots rock music with a real kind of lyrical focus on blue-collar workers, this idea that music has some responsibility for communal and kind of social change. And that style of music of kind of heartland rock it's kind of really came from the 70s and 80s, but it had a resurgence around the economic recession of 2008. And so a lot of bands that still enjoy that sort of modern bands of this heartland rock are bands like The War on Drugs, Waxahachie, Gaslight Anthem, and still like The Killers and Bruce Springsteen. And so I want to focus on today on a band that kind of weaves both dad rock, heartland rock, sort of big kind of anthems, and then also kind of small songs, and that's The Killers. The Killers are kind of a basic band. I mean, they're like pretty mainstream, normal. So like kind of my idea of like kind of cool indie cred that I think I have. The Killers, not so much, but I still really enjoy them. I first heard about them a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. I was talking to my brother, asking him what he wanted for his birthday, and he said that he wanted an album by a band called The Killers. And at that time, I was in this maybe like kind of dark space where I listened to a lot of Christian music. And so the idea of a band called The Killers was like, what? This sounds evil. But no, yeah. So, but it's like, no, clearly they're great. And we don't have to have this divide between sort of sacred and secular music to have meaning. Kind of after that same album, some friends of mine, we kind of went on a bachelor party for a friend who was getting married, and we'd always kind of buy an album and kind of listen to it the entire time so that when we kind of hear it later, we think of that. And that was the album we listened to, Hot Fuss by The Killers. Melanie and I were talking about painting our daughter Anna's sort of, it was intended to be a baby room. It didn't actually end up like she was just always in our room, but we painted this room listening to that same album. Years later, actually just last year, that same band, The Killers, opened up a venue, the Steel House. So they've just kind of always been around in these kind of different stages of my life. And the Killers draw on kind of two influences from when I was younger, and that's Duran Duran and Bruce Springsteen. And so I remember watching this video, Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran, and it seemed kind of dangerous and intriguing. kind of inspiration. Then I mean, listening to Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, also a big influence of the Killers. And that album was kind of misunderstood as it's not really a patriotic album. You kind of hear it on the 4th of July. It's actually a real kind of critique of how we, as a country, have kind of left behind veterans or kind of small town working class folks. So the Killers, you may have heard of them. Like you've heard of songs like When We Were Young, Human, like Mr. Brightside's the biggest one. That song, Mr. Brightside, I'll talk about for a moment here. It came out in 2004 with that sort of debut album, Hot Fuss. But it's been around for 20 years. It's the unofficial anthem of the United Kingdom, like they've declared that. The Major League Soccer team, Minnesota United, they play that song at halftime of every one of their matches. And then if they win at home at Allianz Field, it'll be a big sing-along. The Michigan Wolverines will play this song in their band every home game. It has a record for the longest running song being in the top 100. It's just sort of always existed. It has 2.4 billion streams on Spotify, which is 400 million more streams than Taylor Swift's most popular song, Cruel Summer, which also seems like a song that will endure forever. So it has staying power. And so I just want to talk about... No. We're pro Taylor Swift here, okay? Let the records state. So I want to talk about this song, and so talk about this first song from that album, and then I'm also going to talk about the last song from this most recent album of 2021 today, called The Getting By. So this song, Mr. Brightside, you probably know it. I have zero, maybe less than zero musical ability, so I won't sing for you today. But the chorus is jealousy, turning saints into the sea, swimming through sick lullabies, choking on your alibis. But it's just the price I pay. Destiny is calling me. Open up your eager eyes, 'cause I'm Mr. Brightside. So this song seemed to be, at first kind of listening to it, kind of some throwaway lyrics, but as I was listening to the most recent album, I kind of found myself going back to this song, because this subject in this song is kind of enduring something painful, swimming through sick lullabies, choking on alibis, this sort of jealousy, but they decide they want to open up their eager eyes because they're Mr. Brightside. They want to kind of endure through this pain. So it's like this chorus is saying, I want to have my eyes open during this time of struggle. And the song itself was actually like the songwriter, Brandon Flowers, wrote it because he's witnessed his girlfriend cheating on him. And so that could be what it's about. It could also be about the sort of pain and suffering of the world. So those same themes of that song are explored, deeply in this most recent album, Pressure Machine, which is the cover art is of despair. It's black and white. It's barbed wire. These three kind of electrical poles that look like crosses, and it kind of examines things of despair, like addiction, things that plague small communities, small towns, unemployment, and adultery overdose. And this album is addressing those issues from kind of the small towns. So the first song of that album, called West Hills, it has this chorus of, I was born right here in Zion, God's own son. His Holy Ghost stories and bloodshed never scared me none. While they bowed their heads on Sunday, I cut through the hedges and fields where the light could place its hand on my head in the West Hills. This song kind of is telling the story of someone that was in jail, had to go to jail for possessing drugs that they tried to use to cope against the pain of kind of this town that really had no hope. And then it goes on to say, and if there really is judgment, when he pulls my chart, he'll reject my actions, but he'll know my heart. And he'll prepare a place for me where happiness instills, and the light puts its loving hands on my head. So this song is kind of dealing with these two contrasting ideas. This idea that we're promised in kind of American exceptionalism, Christian nationalism, that we'll just be better because we're Americans, with this reality of economic hardship that plagues often underlooked communities like rural America, communities of color, and trying to help people stand in solidarity with one another in the face of those hardships. These songs of the Killers kind of resembles songs of Bruce Springsteen, like I mentioned before, that ask us to kind of stand up for those that maybe seem to have their rights taken away. And so I was thinking about that for us today, like maybe it's singing with 10 or 20,000 other people, these kind of large like anthemic songs of hope. That could be what it's like to kind of stand up for others. It could also mean kind of being quiet and listening to someone as they unpack the kind of heavy burdens that they carry with them, and we can stand beside them. And so it kind of gets to this last song of this album, Pressure Machine, the Getting By. And it's interesting that the Mr. Brightside was the very first song that the Killers ever wrote, to now the last song on this album, 20 years later, the Getting By. And he says, in a kind of more mature version of Mr. Brightside, the lyrics say that we should hold on, stand up, and the lyrics go, hold on till the getting's good. You'll know I believe in the sun, he says. I ain't no backslider, but my people were told they'd prosper in this land. So this seems to suggest that life is difficult, and there's a lot of disparities in these small towns, that hope seems to be out of reach. But we can stand in solidarity with those and remain in hope that the good is out there. We keep fighting for that. So for us to think about those that we know that maybe fall under the spell of the myth of kind of Christian nationalism or this American exceptionalism that songs of the Killers and Bruce Springsteen and others are fighting against, or for those that are under these systems of oppression, there's hope in these lyrics of the song The Getting By. That's maybe it's the stuff it takes to get up in the morning and put another day in, son, that keeps you standing where you should. So put in another day and hold on till the getting's good. So this idea of keep going is what the song invites us as listeners to do. It wants us to stand up, stand where we are, rise each day, even when it involves kind of facing unfathomable awfulness and inequities of the world, either that you experience on your own or that we know our community faces. It's that standing together that produces hope for us to go on, hope to stand in solidarity with others who are working for justice. And so that's our call, to stand with others until the good really is there. May it be so.